Us humans, we like to be comfortable, but then when you get comfortable, you become complacent. And then you become complacent, then you stop doing the things that you've always wanted to do, and then you end up growing old and having a life of regret. So it starts to kind of go down, domino effect, right? At the end of the day, you're the driver in your seat, and if you don't like something, it's up to you to change it. And it might take a while to change it, it might take a few attempts to change it, but in that change comes growth.
Have you ever thought about getting involved in a trade as a side hustle? With such a shortage of employees at the moment, now might be a great time to discover whether this could be a path for you. While my career path has largely been managerial and administrative, I've been very close to the trades. I'm no stranger to a chop saw, framing hammer, angle grinder. I quite enjoy working with all these things. Okay, maybe not so much the angle grinder. It can do serious damage rather quickly, but I love the feeling of being able to pick up a tool and do stuff. Today's guest talks about the satisfaction she feels in transforming a space through her work as a painter. I totally get that. The tradespeople I know well take great pride in the work that they do. I truly enjoyed my conversation with Tenille Landry. While her expertise is in painting, what she shares applies to so many industries and to life in general. Tenille was a salesperson until one day her employer decided not to pay her the commissions she was owed. Tenille was forced to make a choice, and that choice was to quit. Fast forward 16 years. Since then, she's been working as an employee for painting companies, but then a few years ago started doing painting jobs on her own after hours as a side hustle. After so much work started coming her way, she decided it was time to convert her side hustle into her full-time work. I bet even the principle of how she prices her painting jobs will apply to aspects of your side hustle. The end of episode takeaways include what can happen when you make a decision, not a wish, but a true decision and commitment to take action, and the importance of the 5 people you're spending the most time with. Now here is my conversation with side hustle hero, Tenille Landry. So many of the trades are in high demand right now, including good quality painters. How long have you been involved in the industry?
I'm going on my 16th year now.
Do you remember what got you involved all that time ago?
Well, I was in sales and I was an account manager and I was doing really well. I'm a really good salesperson, but I was on a commission salary kind of format.
Okay.
And I sold about $80,000 one month for my boss, and she just didn't want to pay me my commission.
Wow.
So I was quite upset. And so I said, well, I quit. And I knew that without a salesperson, her business wasn't going to do too well.
Sure.
But that wasn't really why I did it. I just did it because, I'm a very based on principle. Like you pay your workers and you pay them for what they do for you. And that's just the right and honest thing to do. And when she gave me pushback, I decided, well, there's not much I can really do other than leave. I had a friend and he said, don't worry about her. I got some work for you. I'm painting an exterior of a house. I'll pay you $25 an hour cash. And this was back in, I want to say like 2005, 2008, maybe.
Yeah.
That was good money.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, he's going to pay me cash. I'm not making any money with this woman anyways. So what have I got to lose?
Mm-hmm.
So I went out with him one day and I watched what he was doing and I saw what was going on. And I was just out in the sunshine and, there's nobody else around but us. And we were just having such a great day and great time.
Nice.
And it was just really satisfying watching paint go on to something and just knowing that, hey, we did that. We beautified this thing that was not beautiful before. And now it's beautiful because of what we just did.
Very tangible before and after.
I really enjoyed the visual satisfaction, right? And then when the job was done, I got paid cash and I thought, well, this is pretty sweet. And I remembered hearing a saying, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I thought, well, this is something I could love,
Yes.
And so I thought, okay, well, after that job disappeared, he didn't have consistent work for me. So I thought, okay, well, I guess I'm going to try at being a painter. So I applied for a job as a painter and I just let them know I didn't have much experience. And so they started me out, I think it was $14 an hour. So Wow. It was kind of a little bit of a punch in the gut from 25 to 14 an hour. But I thought, well, we got to start somewhere. I was working with a painter there and he was my supervisor, but probably the worst painter I've seen in my whole career,
Oh,
for sure.
wow.
And but this was my instructor, right? So
Yes.
I had to just kind of learn with this guy, and but then I saw him screw up so many times that it actually humbled me to the point where I thought, well, there's more to this paint stuff than I thought. And maybe before I go and make mistakes with thousands and thousands of dollars at stake in people's homes, and I should probably get a better understanding of this paint thing. So I applied for a woman in trades grant, which I got. And then
Nice.
they paid for me to go to school. And the program was a 6-week program. And I had to be there at 7 a.m. out in Surrey every morning. And then I'd go till 3, 4 in the afternoon. And then I'd get home and then I'd go to work in the evenings. And I worked on the same job site that I was hired on for $14 an hour for about 2 years. It was one of those job sites that just kept going on. So I went to school and I got my apprenticeship. And then after the job ended, they bought me all my tools and they paid for a brand new sprayer. They bought me tools,
Wow.
a bunch of equipment. And I think they sponsored about 8 other women. And they said out of all the 8 women that they've sponsored, they decided to give me the tools and the tool grant because they decided that I was the most business minded out of all of them. So that was a big compliment. And then I realized, okay, well, maybe something, to look forward to here. Maybe there's something in it. I was really grateful for the experience and I kept going. And then I will say it's been very challenging as a female in the industry. And I thought being a gay woman might be a little bit better for me, but it wasn't, and it isn't. It's a man's world when in the trades, and it's gotten better, but you're still going to get your knuckleheads out there. And they're never going to go away. So it is challenging in that regard. And I will say to any young woman out there, not to discourage them, but just to kind of warn them that it can be great, but it also can be difficult. And you're going to have your days where it's rewarding and you feel on top of the world, and you have your days where you feel really low. It takes a tough. You have to have a tough shell. You have to have a tough outer shell, right? And you got to be able to roll stuff off your back. And there were times where I wouldn't have work and I would pretend to be a man on the phone just so that they would take me seriously. And then I'd show up to the job and then they'd realize I was a woman. But then once they saw what I could do, they'd end up hiring me. But I'd have to go through little games to get, be creative. And then there's a lot of stuff too, where it's physically demanding.
Sure.
So there's a part of you that also has this pride in you that's like, well, if the guys can do it, I have to be able to do it. And you kind of push yourself and you push your limits. And, I'm 5'3", 125 pounds. So it's physically demanding. My body's definitely gotten stronger, but it's also gotten worn down at the same time. So there's that side of it as well. I'm not going to glamorize everything, and I'm going to give you the truth that comes with it.
Yeah.
But as you move and as you go through it, you have to start deciding who you want to be around, who you want to work with, who you want to work for. And that was a big navigation for me, because like I said, it takes experience in order to start your own business. So it's important that you learn all these skills, and you have to go out and learn them somewhere. And you're going to get some of the stuff in school, but school's really just going to give you the confidence. So I just jumped around from place to place and just kind of learned as much as I could from who I could and when I could. And what I decided to do is try all different facets of the industry, because that's how you can get a real good spectrum of all kinds of facets of what the industry entails. So I did a little bit of automotive. I did a little bit of industrial. I did a little bit of custom homes. I did repaints. I did schools. I've painted prisons. I've painted, just all kinds of stuff that's kind of come my way. I've painted ships, so I just kind of, I remember when I was growing up, my dad always told me, you don't need money to get experience, because there's people out there who have businesses and they can hire you and you can get experience just by working for them. And I found that to be very true. So I just kind of danced around, and then I did movies and I did movie sets. So my first 10 years, I want to say, I really just focused on learning and trying to surround myself with everything that is new and different to me, and try to get a basically just a good understanding of it and learn how to be able to know how to do that and have a little bit of experience with that and a little bit of experience with that, so that it just made me more well-rounded. And I feel like that was a really good move, because now I'm at the point in my career where there's nothing you can throw at me that I haven't seen before.
Right. And doing that early on too gives you the ability to take a look at all those different opportunities within the painting industry to discover for yourself which ones are a fit for you and which ones that you just as soon never do again.
And absolutely. No, you're absolutely right.
Is there any that you remember over those years that you really felt strongly about, that you really wanted to pursue more of?
I prefer doing the residential stuff. It's a lot more satisfying. You're working with the low VOC products, latex paints. You're working with $1 million clients that have money, that just want a nice, beautiful job. And then it's more lucrative too, because it pays better. I've also found the retail spaces. I enjoy retail spaces for a lot of new businesses that are basically just starting a new storefront, brick and mortar kind of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they got their vision of what they want, and I just come in and basically make it happen. And I find that really rewarding, because you're seeing people living their dreams, and you're helping to facilitate that. And it's not some big corporation. It's just some little guy that's just trying to get his kids through college.
Yeah, that would be very exciting to be part of in that.
Yeah.
Way.
And you get to see, it's very visually satisfying, because you go in there and it looks completely different. And then by the end, it's just like, wow, it's just, it's very satisfying.
But whether it was painting ships for schools or residential, that was all for various companies, correct?
Yes, it's difficult. And it's also hard too, because sometimes they don't want you to do more than what they ask you. And sometimes your level of standards are higher than theirs, but they don't want that. They want it where it is for a reason, because maybe that's their business model, and maybe that's how they're making money. And by doing it your way, it might interfere with that, but you don't know the ins and outs of their industry, their business. And so you have to just kind of go along with it. And so what I started noticing is that I was doing custom $25 million homes in West Van. And then I got so good and so like polished. And then that company would, go out of business, or they wouldn't be able to keep me employed. And then I'd have to go somewhere else. And then the minute I went somewhere else, they were like, oh no, your standards are too good. And then, so I started noticing that I would have to almost like adapt myself to them. But then I started noticing after a year that my standards were dropping. And then I thought to myself, no, this is not what I want. So I had to kind of pull back and then reassess things once again. So it's this constant battle that I've been going through for the past 16 years until recently, where I've just decided, if you want to do something right, do it yourself.
Well, you started working for yourself, as you mentioned, as a side hustle outside of working for an employer full time. How long did you think about doing that before actually pursuing that first client of yours?
It's something that I've always thought about, but I needed the right environment and the right situation for it to happen. And so now I'm established. I live on my own. I found a great accountant and bookkeeper and assistant. So important. And she's like my right arm. She does my quotes, my estimates. She invoices my clients for me. I just call her and I'll be on the job. I'll be like, we're done, invoice them. And she's like, okay. And she hits the send button and she already has them ready to go. And then I also have gotten over the hurdle of employees, because I realized I'm never going to find employees. I mean, other companies are having shortages of workers right now. So what I decided is, instead of going so big too quickly, I'm doing more like of a boutique style, where I offer, small 2-3 day jobs, or maybe a week job, but I do it all myself. People really like that, because they know a lot of these companies, the painter who started it has a bunch of young guys, 2 to 5 years experience doing all the work. But when they find out that I'm the one painting their house with all this experience and knowledge, they almost feel like spoiled,
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a neat little niche I found, where that's why I kind of call myself the boutique painter, because it's very boutiquey. Like, you come in, you get your service, and it's excellent quality, and it's the person that's doing the work is the owner and the operator.
Right.
It's kind of an old school way of doing business, but it's really appreciated. And especially amongst the higher end clientele, they really like that.
That's interesting because there was a major reno that I did about 2 years ago. And the painter that I hired had a magnificent reputation and he was really good. But the problem was the person that he hired to help him, and I didn't know this until after, my job was this kid's first day.
You see?
And it was like, I walked into it after and I'm like, what's this? This is not the reputation that I've paid for.
Right.
And so the owner was scrambling. He was the one that came in and had to redo it. And so that speaks to your point perfectly in that regard. I meant to ask you, how do you price a job?
Okay, good question. There's many ways to do it. And there's actually a big science behind that too. So over the years, I've learned the hard way, as we all do. And the beautiful lesson about money is that when you lose money, you learn your lessons faster.
Right.
Whereas with emotional development, we tend to repeat the same things over and over for sometimes a decade. And then one day it finally sinks in, right? But with money, you learn very fast. So I started realizing I was working my butt off and then I was getting peanuts at the end. And I was like, wait a minute, this is all wrong.
Yeah, there's something wrong with the math. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's nobody to be angry with but myself. So, okay, we're not going to do that again. And so I just kept failing and failing and failing. And then after failing a few times, you tighten it up and you learn how to do it. And now I've got such a good formula that I'm actually getting more jobs because I'm making enough money, but I'm also coming in lower than everybody else. Because my formula comes down to, it's interesting. People would think square footage, number one, and they're going to think about maybe like paint quantity, right?
I would think of square footage and the quality of the paint.
And the quality of the paint and the quantity of the paint, right?
Yes, yes.
Right. So that's actually not what I do at all.
Right.
So the only reason I get the square footage is to know how much paint I need for the job.
Sure.
Other than that, I don't need it for my formula, for my numbers. So what I do is I'll go take a look at the house and I'll sit there and I'll literally say to myself, okay, how long will it take you to do this? And I go 20 minutes for that, plus 20 minutes second coat, 40 minutes for that window and masking or whatever. So I know how long it takes me to do things. Yes. And that's something that experience can only give you. Mm-hmm. So I can tell people in an hour, I can do this, this, and this, right? I do it by time. So I look at a whole house and then I'll say, okay, I'm going to need 70 hours to complete this job.
Right.
Or I'm going to need 100 hours. Or I'm going to need 500 hours, whatever that number is.
Right.
That's the meticulous time. Like I've literally taken photographs and I've sat there at night, just, okay, 20 minutes, and then just add it all up. Right. And then by the end, what I do is then I kind of leave a little bit, I throw an extra 10 hours on there just as a buffer.
Of course. Yeah.
Because things will go wrong. Things will happen and you need to account for those things. So I'll throw on an extra 10 to 20 hours or 50 hours, depending on the numbers on the job.
Sure.
And then from there, I'll say, okay, well, how much do you want to make an hour? And how much are you worth an hour? Right. And then the going rate for other contractors. What are they charging an hour? So most contractors are charging between 50 and 70 an hour.
Okay.
50's low, 70's pretty average. So I go in around about 65 an hour.
Okay.
And then I just basically multiply that. And then that's how much it's going to cost. And then I add the quantity of the paint. And then I add that into it. And then that's basically my formula.
Right. Great.
Giving away all my secrets.
No, but I appreciate you sharing that. But at the same time, too, in order for somebody to be able to walk in and say, okay, that's going to take me 14 hours. This is going to take me 3 hours. You need that experience behind you to be able to do that, which absolutely, you have. But you did mention that sometimes you're sitting there in your home at night and you're basically working on these costs. That's something, of course, that you didn't have to do when you were an employee. So after you take a look at what it takes now to run the show yourself, have you found that it's worth the trade?
Yes, it is, because I've got it down now where I can look at a place and I can kind of have a ballpark in my mind, and then I'll take the information and then I'll run it through, and it probably takes me about an hour to price it out, which I don't think is a lot of time at all.
No, that's great.
And Yeah, and then I also meet and greet with the customer, which is also really important for your relationships and just the trust and the confidence, right?
Yes.
So yeah, so it is worth the trade-off because I know that they're going to a company's going to send me to do the work anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm doing the same work. The only difference is that I'm putting in maybe an extra couple of hours in for each job to get the price. But then all that money goes to me, and I've gotten rid of the middleman. And the beauty of it is that I can hire other people to help me when I need them, and I can hire a bookkeeper and hire this and put it into the cost of my job.
Right.
And you just can work with it, and it's more customized because you can see where every dollar is going, and you get to see where there's room for improvement, and you get to see, okay, how much gas has gone up. Okay, now I've got to consider my travel costs. Oh, paint just went up because there's a shortage of paint, and okay, so now this needs to change. So it's a good way to do it because you can scale things to your, to customize them accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it's worth it. And the nice thing that people don't tell you about running your own business is there's days where you're going to work your ass off, but then there's days where you're going to chill and do nothing. And so I feel like there's days where I wake up and I take my dog for a 2-hour walk, and then I go in and I do a little bit of work. Then I come home and I'm like, wow, but I got so much done and I'm making so much more money that it's like I'm working probably 30 hours a week versus 40 to 50, but I'm making double to triple the amount.
And it sounds like you're a lot happier with your life as well, Tenille.
And absolutely. And that's another thing too, when you're waking up every day and you're going to a job constantly, you feel like you're just a part of your number. You're just a cog in the wheel. And when you're doing it for yourself, there's this sense of pride. There's a sense of like accomplishment, satisfaction, and also perfectionism. Like you really want to give your clients a great product, and you feel obliged to care more. Like I care so much more when I work for myself. Not to say that I didn't care when I worked with other people, but I care way more than I did working for somebody else.
And you've mentioned some of those environments where that was discouraged, that you were pulled back when you were going above and beyond.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. And now it's like I'm being paid and I'm being encouraged to do that.
Where are you finding your clients now, or are they finding you?
Well, to be honest with you, I've been really fortunate this year. I was working full time and I started getting phone calls from a repeat client that I basically painted their house 6 years ago. And it was a friend of theirs. And they said, we love the work you did. You did an incredible job. We want you to paint our house. And I got your number from them. And could you come by and do an estimate? So I did. And then I did the job, and very happy with the job. And then while I was on that job, their friend came over and started talking to me. And then the neighbors come out, and people just start coming out and start talking to you. And then another friend was in a pickle for a reno. So I helped her with that. And then I saved the day, and she was just super elated and grateful. And so, and then it just kept coming. And then I didn't even have a business card. I didn't even have a website. And it just kept coming, like a month after month. I had another job, and now we're coming to the end of it now. I'm finishing up the last project of one of the ones that called me just out of the blue.
Right.
But now it's great because I've been able to put some money away. So if I take a week off now, I can go get business cards done, get signage done. And now I can actually start hitting the pavement and doing, the legwork. But yeah, I've been really fortunate, but it was a good momentum. It got me off my ass. It pushed me and put me in the right trajectory, in the right position, and gave me the confidence. And it made me realize, wow, I can do this on my own. Yes. And I haven't even advertised yet. Imagine when I start doing that, so it kind of gave me a little bit of like pump, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. Like I can do this.
How long ago was it that you started doing jobs on the side? And when did you actually quit your last quote unquote job?
I've been doing side jobs here and there on and off for the last few years, but they're very far and few between. So I'll get like 1 or 2 a year. But then what happened is I noticed in the summer, I got 5 in a matter of 3 months.
Wow.
And then I was like, well, it is summertime, but you know what? I also believe like maybe God is telling me something here. This is like showing me what I can do. And so it gave me a taste of it. And then it kind of pushed me into that more of that mind, that thought, and that mind, and started thinking, okay, you know what, this isn't as unreachable and untouchable as I thought it was. So what happened is I left my last company because it was commercial and they're pushing me to be a foreman, and I just wasn't happy, and I was just unmotivated. And then I decided, okay, I'll try a different company. And then I started working for them, and I felt the same. And then I was daydreaming about my side hustle every time I went to work. And then I thought, we got a problem here. Now I've tasted the good life, and I don't like the taste of this. This is like sour lemon juice over beautiful like lavender lemonade over here. So I don't want this lemon juice. I want the lemonade,
For sure.
And then I started realizing like, okay, and maybe this is what I got to do. And then I think it was mostly my friends around me, and they were really supportive and very encouraging, because they started giving my number out to people, and they're like, "Oh, T, you're so great at this. You're so good. And I tell my friends about you all the time." And they're like, you just do your own thing. Like, you're doing it. You can just keep going with this. And I'm like, really, you guys? I'm like, I don't know though. I mean, the winters can be long. And they're like, no, you got this. You got this. And so they're like, okay. And I just started listening to my friends that have known me for the last 15 years, that have watched me go through this career, and they've seen me grow, and they're just like, you're there.
Go
you're
for
fine.
it.
Like, and it was just that little bit of confidence that I needed. Right.
Those people that you find yourself surrounded by are so important to your life and where you're going than what was built into your genes at birth. Like the people that you're basically spending time with. Are they encouraging you, supporting you, helping you? Or are they the type of people that are pulling you down? That is just so key. So that's very cool that you are surrounded by those positive people, and that can see the potential in you sometimes, that maybe there's times when you doubt it in yourself. For them.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Like when you're in your body, you don't see yourself you're out of your body. So these people see you out of your body, and they can see what you're doing. And I think that was really the push. And these people are very successful people too. They're not people that are underachievers by any means. They're all very successful in what they do. And so coming from them, it really hit home, because I was like, wait a minute, these aren't just people that don't care about their lives, don't care about their jobs, are mediocre people. These are highly successful people that are really good at what they do and make really good money and are very qualified, and they can see my potential. So I thought, well, it's got to be true. And it's kind of funny, because we doubt ourselves so much. And I consider myself a confident person, but that self-doubt is in us all. We all have it. And I think that's kind of the fear that keeps us from growing and moving forward with our goals, because it's always that, what if it doesn't work? But you know what? Once you start talking yourself into things, and you start realizing that if I quit this job and start my own business, even if my business doesn't work, I still got another job I can go back to, because they're always going to be there. So that security blanket that we think is a security blanket, it's an illusion. It's a figment of our imaginations, and it's a story that we keep telling ourselves. And once you stop telling yourself as that story, and you tell yourself a different story, and you change the narrative of your story, then everything can shift. But the thing is that we're our own narrators of our own story, and whatever story you're telling yourself is the one you're going to listen to. So what I decided to do was just quit listening to the negative narration and follow the positive narration, and just trust in the universe, and trust in my ability, and just have faith. And so far, so good.
I think that's always the wisest choice, is betting on yourself. That's really where I think our security lies, is that trust within, because there's no guarantee that company that we may have a paycheck today is going to exist in the future. Whereas as you continue to develop yourself, like you've been doing, because there's a couple of things that you mentioned to me before. And I remember one thing that kind of stuck with me, because I know that oftentimes what I hear on a job site is the radio or a tradesperson listening to music. But you told me that's not what you're listening to during the day.
No, so it's kind of funny because I actually started to detest Rock 101, and no and no hate on Rock 101. Everybody loves old good classic rock, right? But it got to a point of 5 years into my trade of the same songs over and over again, like the Don't Stop Believing and all the playlist just going over every day, and I looked around and I saw these guys and they're all just working away to this music every day, and I thought, man, there's got to be something better for my body and better for my mind than this, because I've heard all these songs 100 times. There's got to be something else. It's like eating the same food every day. You eventually your body's going to shut it down and say, listen, like, we need some nutrition here. And so I said, you know what, I got to give my mind some nutrition, and I'm working 8 hours. What can I learn? How can I grow? How can I be better? So I started downloading podcasts, and I just started, okay, so I want to learn how to run a business, or I want to learn how to manage my my anger or my emotions, or I want to learn how to, maybe I want to listen to something about like history, maybe some history and something like informative, that when I go out next time with my friends, I can tell them a story about something that they've never heard. And, just so two-dimensional, having more dimension to my character and my knowledge, and my education never stops until the day you die. We're always, learning. And if there's a thirst and a hunger for knowledge, we will find it. We're very creative. And so I thought, I'm going to do something that maybe other people aren't doing. And if they are doing it, great. And if they're not, then they should be. And I just started listening to podcasts, and I just, oh my goodness, like I've spent 8 hours a day just listening to talking. And people say, like, doesn't that get boring? It's like, no. Repetitive Rock 101 gets boring. But listening to life experiences or other people's stories or other people's challenges or success it's moving, and it gave me a lot to think about.
You're clearly a lifelong learner, and that's going to continue to serve you well into the future.
Us humans, we like to be comfortable, but then when you get comfortable, you become complacent.
Right.
And then you become complacent, then you stop doing the things that you've always wanted to do. And then you end up growing old and having a life of regret. So it starts to kind of go down, domino effect, right? At the end of the day, you're the driver in your seat. And if you don't like something, it's up to you to change it. And it might take a while to change it. It might take a few attempts to change it. But in that change comes growth, and comes development, and comes new beginnings and new things. And I've also noticed people that are complacent, the universe ends up delivering them something that makes them shift out of their comfort. So I decided, instead of the universe doing it for me when I least expect it, I'd rather be able to take the driver's seat and be able to kind of simulate my own environment. And then if things come my way, I can roll with them better and kind of integrate them and kind of work with them, rather than the rug pulled out from underneath me, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone thinking about becoming a painter as a side hustle?
Get into a job where you can work with somebody, not too big of a company. Try to get into a smaller company where you have one-on-one time with an experienced painter. Always surround yourself with people with more experience than you have, and that's how you're going to grow. Humble yourself, throw out everything you think you know, and be a blank canvas, and just be a sponge, even better. Just absorb and just suck in everything. I can't tell you how many little hacks and little tricks that I've learned from older men. I love working with the older guys.
Yeah.
They're like a grandpa. They're sweet to you. They're kind, and they're gonna retire one day and pass away with all that knowledge, and they want to share it. They want to share it with you. And if they find somebody that they see is eager to learn, they will give you so much information. So just humble yourself, and just take it all in and learn.
Well, thank you so much, Tenille, for sharing your story, your wisdom, your painting expertise, and for being today's side hustle hero.
Thank you for having me, Joan. Much appreciated and enjoyed it, every minute of it. Thank you so much.
There's a huge difference between merely wishing for something versus making a decision to act. When you're simply wishing for it, it largely stays as, well, a wish. But when you make a decision and a firm commitment to do something, it's like the universe conspires to help make it happen. Then it's your job to act on the next steps and the promptings that show up. For Tenille, it was accepting the private painting jobs that started coming her way. Follow those leads. It can be exciting and at the same time, well, frightening, because it'll likely require you to do things that you haven't done before. But consider the alternative: staying in your comfort zone, doing the same thing month after month, year after year, until you die. That's not living, that's merely existing. Life should be an amazing adventure. Make a decision today that that is exactly what your life is going to be about. Secondly, Tenille talked about the positive influence that those around her had in her decision to take the leap to transform her side hustle into her full-time self-employed work. It works in the reverse too, you know. Had she been surrounded by negative people who reminded her of all the times that things didn't go right for her, she may have just as easily come to the conclusion, the erroneous conclusion, I might add, that she didn't have what it takes to start her own painting company. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. As I mentioned, the people who you find yourself surrounded by are more important to your growth, your future, and where you're going than was built right into your genes at birth. I talk about this in my book. It is so important. Get in the right environment. If you have negative people around you, it's not that they're bad people. They just don't understand that the thoughts that they're choosing cause their feelings, which drive their behavior, which create their results. So choose wisely. Your future happiness, health, and wealth depend on it. Well, that's a wrap for today. If you'd like to get in touch with Tenille, send me a DM. She's been too darn busy to set up a website and social media, although she tells me that's coming. In the meantime, visit sidehustleheropodcast.com for the show notes, where you'll find links to my 12-part video course, Turn Your Thoughts into Wanted Things, and my best-selling book, The Way Success Works. I'd love to hear your feedback on the show, on the guests, how this podcast is helping you. What areas could we do better? Shoot me an email message to hello@joanposivy.com or by DM on Instagram @JoanPosivy. Thanks for listening and hustle on.